right, so welcome to this deep dive, and we're going to get into something pretty fascinating, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Denzel Washington and his relationship with the Oscars.
Interesting.
Yeah, we've got this Esquire interview as our source material,
Okay.
and it kind of reveals this side of the story you might not expect, right? So get this.
Okay.
He talks about a surprising Oscar loss that led to, get this, 15 years of bitterness.
Wow.
And then there's this turning point that might surprise you.
Well, this should be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, because this isn't just like your typical, Hollywood, I got robbed kind of story.
Right, right.
We're talking about Denzel Washington here.
Exactly.
Like two-time Oscar winner at this point.
Yeah.
So to really dive into what it was that really bothered him,
Yeah.
and then how he eventually found peace with it, I think is really fascinating.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, picture this.
Okay.
The year is 2000.
Okay.
Denzel's nominated for Best Actor for The Hurricane. He's already got an Oscar, right, for Glory.
Yes.
He's up against Kevin Spacey for American Beauty.
Huge movie.
And he even snagged the Golden Globe.
Right, which often means you're the front runner for the Oscar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the expectations were huge.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Denzel was at the top of his game. Everybody was watching
Yeah.
to see if he was going to get that second Oscar.
And then, bam, Kevin Spacey wins.
Oh.
And the article kind of recounts how Denzel remembers this moment
Oh, really?
when Spacey's name was called.
Yeah.
He felt like everyone in the room was looking at him.
Oh, wow.
What do you make of that?
Oh, that's fascinating. It's a fascinating little psychological detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really highlights kind of the pressure cooker of those awards shows.
Yeah.
And for someone like Denzel, who's already an icon,
Yeah.
that loss must have felt incredibly public and personal.
Yeah. And he even admits in the interview that he went home and drank that night to cope. He said he had to.
Yeah.
And, it makes you realize that even someone at that level of success
Oh, for sure.
is still human,
Totally.
still vulnerable to disappointment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting that he brings up drinking in this context.
Yeah.
Because there's this other really intriguing detail in the interview.
Okay.
He says that he carried this bitterness about the Oscars for about 15 years.
Wow.
But then he adds this little caveat.
Okay.
He's like, from 1999 to 2014, when I put the beverage down, I was bitter.
Wait, hold on. So he's saying that letting go of the alcohol somehow helped him let go of the resentment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty significant connection.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how, our habits and our choices can really affect our emotional well-being in ways that we might not realize.
Right.
Was he numbing those feelings with alcohol all those years? Did stopping drinking allow him to finally process those emotions in a healthier way?
It's definitely a thought-provoking idea. And to think, 2 years after that hurricane loss,
Right.
he wins his second Oscar for Training Day.
Yeah, incredible performance.
Arguably one of his most powerful performances.
Yeah.
You'd think that would have erased the sting of the earlier loss.
Right, you would think, yeah, but
right.
the article says that's not what happened.
Right.
He held on to that resentment.
Yeah.
Not necessarily about the award itself, but about something deeper.
Right.
Like he felt like the Academy hadn't truly seen or appreciated his work in The Hurricane.
So even winning another Oscar didn't fix that feeling of being overlooked.
Right, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy.
It shows that, achieving what we set out to do doesn't always erase past hurts.
Right.
It's almost like there was this emotional wound that needed to heal in a different way.
So how did he finally move past it?
Well, the interview says that he basically checked out of the whole Oscars game.
Really?
Yeah, he told his wife, Pauletta, to watch all the nominated films and vote on his behalf.
He essentially said, they don't care about me. I don't care about them.
Yeah, it's quite a statement.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about his mindset at the time?
It seems like he was reclaiming his power, right? Choosing not to participate in a system he felt was flawed.
Right, but there's also this sense of resignation.
Yeah.
Like a detachment from something that once held so much weight for him.
And that detachment lasted for years until that turning point in 2014 when he stopped drinking.
Yeah, I'm really curious to delve deeper into that connection.
Why?
Like, what do you think was going on there?
It makes you wonder if the alcohol was somehow preventing him from facing those deeper emotions.
Right.
About feeling unseen, undervalued.
Yeah, maybe giving it up allowed him to finally process those feelings.
Right.
To reach a place of acceptance.
Yeah.
And even forgiveness.
That's a pretty powerful idea.
It is.
And it makes you wonder about Pauletta's role in all this too, right?
Right.
She was watching all the movies, voting on his behalf.
What was her experience like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and unfortunately, we don't get her perspective in this interview.
No.
But it's definitely something worth considering as we continue this deep dive.
Oh, for sure.
So we've got this idea that Denzel was deeply affected by this Oscar loss,
Uh-huh.
carried that bitterness for years,
Yeah.
and that his journey to sobriety might be connected to his ability to finally let go.
It's fascinating.
Where do we go from here?
Well, let's dig deeper into how this experience shaped his relationship with the Oscars
Okay.
and Hollywood in general.
Right.
The article has some really individual quotes
Okay.
about his evolving perspective on awards and recognition.
I'm really curious to see what he has to say about all that.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
So one of the most striking things Denzel says in this interview is, I don't need validation from anybody else.
Mm.
And that, I think, really gets to the heart of his shift in perspective.
It's almost like he's saying, I know my worth,
Right.
regardless of whether I have a statue on my shelf.
Exactly. And he goes on to talk about how he's more focused on the work itself,
Okay.
the craft of acting rather than the accolades.
Right.
He says, I've been blessed to do what I love to do.
Yeah.
There's a real sense of gratitude there, a recognition that he's already living the dream.
Yeah, it's interesting how he contrasts that with the feeling of being unseen and undervalued that we talked about earlier.
Right.
It's almost like he's had to redefine what success means to him
Right.
to find validation from within,
Yeah.
rather than seeking it externally.
And that's such an important lesson, isn't it? Especially in a world that often measures worth by external markers of success.
Yeah.
Denzel's story reminds us that true fulfillment comes from aligning with our passions, doing the work that matters to us, and recognizing our own value.
So how does this all connect to his relationship with the Oscars now?
Right.
Is he completely indifferent?
Well, he's definitely not chasing those awards anymore.
Right.
He even jokes about how he's become the presenter now,
Okay.
giving out Oscars rather than receiving them.
Right.
But there's also this sense of peace in his tone when he talks about it.
Uh-huh.
Even amusement, you know? It's no longer this loaded, emotionally charged thing for him.
Yeah, he even talks about how he's finally able to enjoy the Oscars again,
Huh.
to appreciate the artistry
Yeah.
and the celebration of filmmaking without getting caught up in the competition.
And that speaks to the power of letting go, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's no longer carrying that baggage, that resentment.
Right.
So he can experience the event in a completely different way.
But, I keep thinking about Pauletta
Right.
and how she fits into all of this.
Yeah.
The article doesn't give us her perspective,
Right.
but I bet she had a lot to do with his journey.
I think you're right, yeah.
Imagine watching your husband go through all of that, the highs and lows
Yeah.
of awards season.
Of course.
The emotional roller coaster
Sure.
of winning and losing.
Absolutely.
She must have been his rock, his confidant.
Right, and she was the one watching all those movies, filling out his ballads for years.
I wonder if that was a way for them to connect,
Right.
to share the experience in a less pressured way.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe it even helped him to detach from the whole thing.
It's definitely possible. And
Yeah.
it makes you appreciate the power of a supportive partner,
Yeah.
someone who can help us navigate those difficult emotions and see things from a different perspective.
So we've got Denzel finding his own internal validation,
Right.
letting go of the need for external recognition. He's no longer chasing Oscars
Right.
and can now appreciate the event for what it is.
Yeah.
And all of this seems to be intertwined with his sobriety,
Right.
his relationship with Pauletta, and a deeper understanding of himself.
That's a really great summation of where we've landed.
Yeah.
And it leaves me wondering,
Yeah.
what does all of this mean for us,
Right.
the listeners,
Yeah.
What can we take away from Denzel's experience that might apply to our own lives?
Yeah. That's a great question. What do you think? What resonates with you most from all this?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of finding validation from within.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others,
Right.
chasing external markers of success.
Right.
But Denzel's story reminds us that true fulfillment comes from pursuing our passions,
Yeah.
recognizing our own worth,
Uh-huh.
and finding joy in the journey itself.
That's a really powerful message.
It is.
And it makes me think about the things that I might be holding on to,
Oh, yeah.
resentments or disappointments from the past
Sure.
that might be preventing me from moving forward.
Of course, yeah.
Denzel's journey to sobriety and his ability to let go of that bitterness is inspiring.
It is, and it's a reminder that we all have the power to choose how we respond to challenges,
Right.
how we process our emotions,
Yeah.
and ultimately how we define success for ourselves.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about, that's for sure.
Me too. And as we wrap up this episode, I think it's important to acknowledge that we only have Denzel's side of the story here.
Right.
We haven't heard from Pauletta.
Right.
And I think that's a really crucial missing piece.
Absolutely. Her experience throughout all of this must have been incredibly unique.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine being the spouse of someone navigating the pressures of Hollywood,
Right?
the emotional ups and downs of awards season.
Totally.
What was it like for her to watch him struggle with that Oscar loss?
Right.
How did she support him through it?
Yeah.
Did she share his resentment?
It's so fascinating to think about, isn't it?
It is.
And it makes you wonder what insights she might have that could add even more depth to this story.
It almost feels like a deep dive within a deep dive.
Right.
What do you think, listeners?
Yeah.
What do you imagine Pauletta's experience was like throughout all of this?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them with us on social media, and let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah, it really makes you realize there's always more to the story than we see on the surface, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when it comes to something as public as the Oscars.
Yeah, we often get caught up in the spectacle,
Oh, yeah.
the wins and losses, but we forget about the human beings behind those moments,
Right.
the complex emotions and experiences that shape them.
And thinking about Pauletta's potential perspective really brings that home for me.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive has kind of made me wonder,
Yeah.
do we put too much stock in these awards like the Oscars?
That's a great question. I mean, Denzel's journey seems to suggest that they could be both validating and incredibly misleading.
Yeah.
I mean, he won twice,
Right.
but this one loss clearly affected him more deeply.
For years, and then there's that idea that he felt unseen.
Right.
Despite all the recognition, it makes you wonder, like, what does real validation even look like?
It's different for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, for some, it might be critical acclaim. For others, it might be box office success.
Yeah.
Or even just the satisfaction of creating something meaningful, you know?
All right.
I think Denzel's story highlights the importance of defining that for yourself
Yeah.
and not letting external measures dictate your worth.
That's such a valuable takeaway. It's so easy, right, to get caught up in chasing awards or recognition.
Oh, absolutely.
But ultimately, true fulfillment has to come from within.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Denzel's decision to kind of step back from the Oscars,
Right.
to let Pauletta vote for him. You know, it was like he was reclaiming his power, choosing not to play a game he no longer felt aligned with.
And yet, even after stepping back,
Right.
he still carried that bitterness for years.
Yeah, it really speaks to how deeply that loss affected him.
It does, and it's where that connection with his sobriety becomes even more interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if giving up alcohol allowed him to finally confront those emotions head on,
Right.
process them in a way that he couldn't before.
Maybe it gave him the clarity and the emotional space he needed to let go of that resentment.
Yeah, to find peace with the experience.
To find peace, it's a reminder that personal growth and healing can happen in really unexpected ways.
And that those journeys are often intertwined with other aspects of our lives. Right? We can't separate our emotional well-being from our choices, our relationships, our overall approach to life.
Yeah.
Denzel's story is really a testament to that interconnectedness.
This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
Oh,
What do you think, listeners?
yeah. What resonated with you most from Denzel's story?
Did it change your perception of him, of the Oscars,
Right.
or even of your own experiences with success and disappointment?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Head over to our social media channels and share your takeaways.
Yeah, we always appreciate getting to connect with you
Absolutely.
and continue the conversation.
And that's a wrap for our deep dive into Denzel Washington's complex relationship with the Oscars.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.